This is the book I channeled for myself that I needed to get. It's Connecting with the Afterlife. Your intro to spirit. More and more of us are opening our minds to truth. We are not alone. Spirit is all around us. Never before has humanity had such quick access to so many loud experts. You can live in a world that encourages us to deny the presence of spirit, spirit guides, and ancestors. In this world, the skeptics will seem louder than everyone else. You're reading this book, so I will assume that this is not you, but you know this world exists. If you're ever encountering someone who doesn't believe in spirit, you know it is near impossible to convince them of anything else. Maybe you know this well because you used to deny the presence of spirit yourself. I have never done that. Maybe you got curious about another option and thought there must be something out there. After changing your mind, you'll be able to see evidence of this something everywhere. But if you go out in the world searching for something more, you find that the discoveries are endless. This points to a spiritual law we will discuss later on. Is there another alternative? The short answer is yes. You've seen the title of this book, so I'm guessing you know which perspective we're coming from here. There are many ways to see the world and our place in it. You can acknowledge that there is a larger energy that is all light, all love, and all abundance, that surrounds and supports us all the time. This energy is what keeps our hearts beating and the plants growing. From this perspective, you might notice that denying the existence of this energy is how we humans get into trouble. Let's dig a little deeper. Remember being a kid and having so many questions you asked and asked and asked until you got a satisfactory answer, or you knew it was time to stop. And yet I bet you've noticed as you got older that questions drive humanity forward. This is what fills our experience. We asked if sending a message to another person was possible and got paper letters. Then we created envelopes, fancy papers, and stamps. We wondered if it was possible to send those messages faster, and development of our methods led us to emails, DMs, and texts. We're all still asking and looking for answers that make sense. Spirit never tells us to stop asking or punishes us for a question that hits too close to home. We are brave and unstoppable in our questions. Science has proved very effective in reaching answers. And in the same way that we kept asking and developing answers to how to send a message, we've also created an abundance of scientific methods to get the answers we're looking for. Think of all the types of scopes, telescopes, microscopes, stethoscopes. Science and an objective world provide us with a sense of comfort, but for some of us, this comfort is too inviting. It's essential for us to see, smell, touch, taste, and feel with our bodies, and for many of us, we've decided that this is all there is. The world we can see, smell, taste, and touch. The problem is that we have questions regarding the existence of spirit. But we've also created the ideas that spirit cannot be perceived with our physical senses. But another way, our desire to continue to ask and look for answers to our questions suggests the presence of spirit on its own. Man, there's so much. I think when I get notifications, it dings on here too. Apparently everybody knows I'm reading, and they're like, hello, what are you doing? And I lost my headband because I was laying down. So. We don't need to use the tools we've developed to know that spirit exists because it lives inside of us and pushes us forward. Despite this, the worlds of science and spirit are separate for many. We put so much value on what we can understand through our senses that anything that requires stepping outside the object world is considered invalid. This creates an idea that anything to do with the spirit world is seen as something special. I know that working as a nurse, like, this is just kind of thoughts to myself because this book is for me, but working as a nurse and coming from a scientific background and loving science and working with science and reading books about anatomy and physiology and like medications, pharmacology class, stuff like that, like so like this. And then like you're in this box and then all of a sudden something happens and the science doesn't work. The science isn't helping. And you have to take that leap of faith and go a little deeper, and that does lead you to your spiritual path. Good for you, people that don't have to jump out of the box and you haven't had a horrible trial come up, but I've jumped out of the box so many times, I'm not getting back in the box. Okay? You can see this on television. Even our spiritual world can be packed, so it's digestible for popular shows, but there must be a limit to how spirit is presented. When physics or mediums are depicted on television, their talents and skills are held up to be special. While there are people who do have unique abilities when it comes to spiritual connection, being able to speak to spirit is not depicted as being normal in everyday life. What happens when the world of science points us back to spirit? Let's take an existence of a black hole as an example. While astronauts and physicists have never seen a black hole, they know these forces of nature exist. All they do is swallow matter. Some of them are billions of times bigger than our sun. Science has discovered their existence, and we know they are created from the explosion of massive stars. Yet we can't see what happens inside of them. We don't know why they exist, or are we already in a black hole? There's so much about these phenomenons that we just don't know. It's in these unanswered questions that we can invite in silence. And in the silence, we hear a different kind of voice, the voice of spirit. Our indigenous cultures didn't have so much trouble when it came to knowing the unknown. Many of these cultures that scientists at one time called primitive saw spirit in everything. Robin Wall Kimmerer, a biologist and decorated professor, puts it beautifully in Braided Sweetgrass. You'd think that biologists of all people would have words for life, but in scientific language, our terminology defines the boundaries of our knowledge. What lies beyond our grasp remains unnamed. Acknowledging this unknown presence is not totally strange to science. For example, we don't have to look further than the scientist himself, Albert Einstein. In his letters to his friends and colleagues, he often discussed the spirit and how existence could be proved by looking at the things that make up our physical experience. Add that to the list of things we need to look up. Albert Einstein and what he said about spirit. I want to know. He was smart, and I think he was autistic. My family's very autistic. Okay. Despite its mysterious nature, there's a way to see and experience spirit for ourselves. In fact, there are many, many ways we can understand our spiritual world. Like gravity, matter, and sound, our spiritual world is dictated by laws. Thanks to The Secret, most of us are familiar with one of these laws, the attraction one. However, there are many more, such as the law of oneness, cause and effect, and relativity. Though you'll find many of these laws go by different names depending on what you're reading or who you're talking to. In basic terms, the law of oneness tells us that spirit is in everything. And our denial of this will never change that. Living the law of oneness looks like acknowledging spirit is all around you and that you are surrounded and supported in every moment. No one can tell you what it feels like to live this, and you must experience it yourself. But do you know what denying the law of oneness in your life is like? Excuse me. It's the idea that we are separate from others, whether they be physical beings or spiritual. Thinking we are removed from others can precede a lonely existence where you believe spirit has forgotten you or feel like you are just not seen and heard. If these words hit home, consider how connected you feel to the life around you. This might be easier if you live with other people, plants, or animals. Can you consider there might be an essential spirit in the cup you used to drink your coffee or tea out of in this morning? I think that you can put energy into things. So I guess is energy spirit. So like if I'm going and I'm drinking out of the same coffee cup in the morning, my energy, whatever, and I'm always doing my like affirmations, my meditations in the morning, that coffee cup's gonna have a lot of positive energy, and it's gonna have the memories of my energy I put into it with all the affirmations and work I did with it, and the love that I have for that coffee or tea when I am doing something. So does that energy that I put into something give that object then spirit? Or did it already have spirit and then I'm just adding my energy to that spirit? Interesting. I need like my bookmark to put on here. The charger for your phone, or even the mask you use when you venture out into the world. Your answer to these questions will clue you to the spirit inside you. In short, these laws dictates how anything and everything goes from the realm of spirit or the astral into your 3D existence. These laws also dictate the cycles of life and death that the things in our world go through. The law of abundance is an excellent example of this. Of course, many of us want the law to apply when it comes to money, and it does, but not in the way you might think. Here's how Dr. Margot Kirktakar describes the law. If you look around us, we see nothing but an abundance of everything in our world. Everything comes in multitudes of varieties, whether it's colors, animals, fruits, plants, trees, or humans. We are all meant to enjoy and share in the world of abundance. This means that if you choose to see poverty in your experience, you will see a lot of poverty. I can understand how a point of view like this might be controversial. If you go down that line of thinking, you find an abundance of implications. Seeing illness will lead you to see more and more ailments, garbage, flowers, hurt, and birds. The same concept can be applied to ourselves. We have an abundance of thought. Our bodies are made up of millions of cells, and we always seem to have more than enough energy to live. Unfortunately, we can turn this law against ourselves when we refuse to see the abundance for what it is. We can experience an abundance of lack in a way. When we decide to see the world a certain way, that perspective will appear to be all around you. The world will give you an abundance of proof regardless of what your perspective is. Remember earlier when I mentioned that the discoveries are endless along with our questions? This is simply an expression of the law of abundance. Regardless of what you choose to see or how you choose to shape your world, you will find an abundance of proof that will support your point of view. I talk a lot about how if you think about somebody in your life that you really hate picking up the phone call, you really hate going over and checking up on them, just being around their energy is super draining. They always talk about negative things. They're always like nothing goes right in their life, right? They weren't always like that. They started out just like you and me, and they just one day they focused on the negative, and then the next day they continue to focus on the negative, and the next day they continue to focus on the negative. And when you're focusing on the negative, all you see is the negative. That's why I'm like, especially this month, we're supposed to focus on abundance and positivity and manifestation, but you have to realize that manifestation goes with everything. I did a short video on it, and it's just talking about like the things that you even tell yourself, the thoughts that you have in your mind. You're not worthy, you're not going to succeed. The stuff that you repeat that other people tell you that's going to put you in that frame of mind, and that's going to ruin your abundance because you're putting that energy out there. So focusing on the positive is really important. And I guess that would go with the law of abundance. What does this all mean? This is when we get to talk about another popular law we've all heard before. As above, so below. I'm shipping out a candle that is as above, so below. See how this is like, this is the book I picked for myself. When I did a reading, I specifically put in our subscription boxes, I put what, I pulled cards and I was like, what book does each person need to focus on? Because we're supposed to learn more this month, as well as focus on abundance and manifestation. We're supposed to learn. So reading is going to be super important this month. And so I told each person what I felt like they needed to find a book on self-love. They needed to find a book on breaking down their barriers or their boundaries or their walls that they've built up. They need to let go of their anger. They need to, like, that kind of stuff. And when I looked up mine, and the stuff that I stood in need of, this book stood out. And this symbol stood out too, because I've been using this symbol in my energy healing sessions. When I'm working on somebody's heart and I'm doing my Reiki session, I add my own twist to stuff. And this is what I see. Like, I try to remap your heart and get it going again in this, like, atom looking, sacred geometry looking sign, because I want your hearts to flow in all the directions. And then I posted a manifestation video this morning, and I'm supposed to focus on abundance as well each day, because abundance is supposed to be all around me. And look at, the book is talking about the law of abundance. Like, this is the first time I've sat down and read the book. I'm in a lot of pain, so I'm sorry if I'm fidgety. My air purifier's on in the background. I'm not going to shut it off, and I look crazy because I just took a rest in the bed because I'm sick. So as above, so below. I'm shipping out that candle. This law points to the fact that everything in our world does so first in the mind. When you get an idea, spirit has an idea too. So understand the law of abundance goes back to how we approach spirit and how we approach the world we experience with our senses. If everything appears in the world of spirit before it shows up in real life, we could see how approaching life in terms of spirit first gives us the ultimate power in creating and to create and live our lives the way we want. This requires focus on living from the perspective that respecting spiritual laws first. Some would say this point of view is incredibly healing because it enables us to shift our focus from things we can't control to what we can control. Once you change your perspective, you can see these spiritual laws in actions. Everything around you will slowly start to provide evidence of your new way of seeing the world, the law of abundance. Take that highly popular movie, The Matrix. I like that movie. Putting aside how the film depicts the two worlds for our entertainment, if you take the perspective that what we perceive to be the real world is actually a result of how we view spiritual law, you might watch The Matrix and see the model mirrored back. The movie then becomes a wonderful example of how our worlds work, a false world and a real one underneath, literally in the movie. That false world underneath that false world. As you may already know, many people have made this connection. Depending on how familiar you are with our worlds and the movie script, this can get pretty deep. But what's important here is to understand the movie of your focus. This is the perfect manifestation of the law of abundance. What you think you see in the world will be shown back to you and will grow and grow as you repeat that same perspective for yourself. This perspective, one that puts emphasis on living from our spiritual divine understanding and not being affected by our outside world, can be seen everywhere. In our religious texts, on television and social media, people are waking up in the idea that we affect our physical world by giving reverence to the spiritual world first. Using spiritual law for your life. The next question becomes, how do you use these laws to create the change we desire to see in our lives? An abundance of methods, tools, ideas, and undertakings can serve our purpose, but I do not want you to get caught up in the making extensive lists and complicated projects for yourself. Are you a list maker like me? Life is chaotic entirely on its own without needing any more intervention. Most of the work is involved in changing your perspective. Let's say you've read all this and want to conduct a little experiment. You're not quite convinced that the spiritual world even exists, but you like the sound of it. You like the idea of living from the perspective that nothing in the real world can impact you in any way. So you want to see if it's possible to see your life differently and take on a new point of view. There's still traffic, construction in the apartment above you, door slams, the dog finds the shoe you hide, creditors call. And the list goes on, with each item more terrible and scarier than the last. In my work, the clients who have come to perform this experiment for themselves all have one thing in common: they are ready to give up. Instead of falling into this despair of all the horrible things and all the things they want to change in their lives, they choose to get still. They choose to be the eye in the storm. It wasn't easy at first. If you look at your usual way of thinking and feeling as a pendulum, you will first be tested once you decide to seek the truth. If you're accustomed to feeling angry, pitiful, or defenseless, the traffic will thicken and the construction will get louder. Same with doors and calls from the creditors. The dog will find that one thing you can't replace. This is what makes this change in perspective so tricky, mainly because it threatens your ego. Your new perspective, I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, will be tested. Either you go back to feeling angry, pitiful, defenseless, or you take the alternative choice and choose to be transformed from worrier to warrior. You can choose to see those tests as proof that your perspective is working. This is your moment of ultimate triumph. And the practice of retraining your point of view gets easier and easier. It's like all spiritual law clicks in, and then the law of abundance gives you more and more proof that you are the warrior. The law of attraction shows up and brings new ideas and perspectives that change how you see traffic. Instead of getting angry, you take the time to listen to a podcast about a career you're passionate about, and then you get to experience all the laws without actually seeing that that is what's happening in your life. You just start to move in more and more excitement and joy regardless of what is happening around you. Your point of view. Why is all of this necessary when it comes to working with your ancestors and spirit guides? We have a lot of misconceptions floating around about what it means to interact with spiritual energies. As soon as you mention out loud, and I'm including social media or doing a Google search for information, that you're interested in communicating with your ancestors and guides, you'll see a lot of fear-based information. Another piece of evidence of the law of abundance. Even if you read every book on spiritual laws and communication with your guides, it's important to go into this journey with a complete understanding of how you see the world, because whatever your perspective is, it will show up for you in your world. We all have some levels of doubt, especially when we begin to realize how well taken care of we are and how we already have the abundance we seek in our lives. On a deep level, we want some proof, but the kind of proof we want is very specific. What is the proof you're looking for? What are the questions you are still asking? Knowing this is the key of your relationship with your guides and ancestors. These questions and the specific proof you're looking for will determine the tones of your conversation with spirit. If you're very adamant about what this communication needs to sound like to fit what you're looking for, how you connect with will be affected. What's important here is taking on that childlike perspective and experimenting playing and testing the ideas for yourself. Now that you have an intro to the spirit world and how it works, we know the perspective from which our guides and ancestors perceive our worlds. This is just an introduction, however, go forth and keep asking questions. So I guess the challenge for this chapter, this one's just intro, the next one is safety first, is to change your perspective and start working with the law of abundance and focusing on gratitude, and changing your perspective into thinking about everything involved with spirit and putting out good energy, receiving good energy, not hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Just kind of cleanse yourself and allow yourself to be more on the positive path of things. And then I guess I'm not going to advertise that I'm reading this. If you stalk my page, all my social medias, you'll see that I'm reading this. But it is Connecting with Afterlife by Nevaeh Clark. How to communicate with your spirit guides, ancestors, angels, and loved ones. Mediumship development, daily rituals for guidance, healing, and empowerment. One of the things that I have been working on as an intuitive psychic medium is not doubting myself. So that's my perspective. I'm changing my world by not doubting myself and my skills. And I've also changed the way I'm bringing in clientele. My perspective on the clients that I wanted to bring in was like, I wanted to bring in every client everywhere, regardless of what mental health or state of frame of mind they were in, because my family is very toxic and they have horrible habits and they have really bad mental health, and their cycles are just, it's abuse. And so I just was letting my practice be open to anybody and everybody. And that got me in trouble this last month. And it allowed things that were not great to come in through clients, like negative energy. And I had to realize that wasn't healthy for me, for my family, for my home. So I changed my perspective. I changed my frame of mind and thinking, and I just want to focus on the law of abundance, on attracting people that are on the right spiritual journey, that are trying to open themselves up in the right way, that are ready to heal, that are on the high vibrational path and are the cycle breakers, and they are not trapped in really, really dark places. I mean, I have a lot of trauma and I have a lot of healing and there are a lot of holes in here, but I'm not like continuing the pattern of trying to be a bad person. I'm trying to heal myself. So I changed that frame of mind and thinking with the clientele that I'm bringing in. And I've had several new clients since that client came to me that made me change my thinking. And they are of the higher vibrational beings. They are the clientele that I want to bring in, and I shouldn't feel guilty for just wanting to bring in those that are ready for me to open their energy. Some people can't handle it, and I don't want to attract the people that can't handle my energy and how I'm opening their energy to other things. So anyways, that was the first chapter of this book. Bye.